Judy's Magic Cast-On is a great example of the perfect cast-on for a specific situation. We love a good specialty technique. This cast-on is designed for in-the-round projects that start with a closed seam. A great example is the toe section on a pair of toe-up socks. You'll also find this cast-on used for top-down hats and mittens or even toys. Hi, I'm Hannah from knitting.com, and today we'll be digging into Judy's Magic Cast-On. It's a little bit fiddly to learn, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be casting on for all sorts of projects in no time. Today, you'll be using at least 2 DPN needles or a long circular needle to cast on using this technique. Both the yarn tail and the strand are looped around 2 needles held parallel to create live stitches that are already connected to each other in the center. Sound a little complicated? Don't worry. We'll show you how to do all the steps to get you started casting on with confidence. All right, we're all set up to work Judy's Magic Cast-On. I have my yarn and I have my DPNs. I have 5 DPNs, but you only need 2 to start. So I'll take 3 of them out for now. Okay, now that we're left with 2, the first thing you're going to do is leave a long yarn tail, about 3 times the length of your project. It's always better to leave more than less. Tie a quick slip knot in your yarn, like so. And put that on one of your DPN needles. Next thing you're going to do is take your yarn tail and your yarn strand out towards the left if you're a right-handed knitter. If you're a lefty, it's the opposite. Grab your second DPN and hold them together in one hand. I like to keep the pad of my thumb between the 2 needles to separate them a little bit and give my stitches a little bit of breathing room. Otherwise, sometimes they wind up being too tight and too hard to knit into on the first row. The next step you're going to do is you're going to take both strands, wrap them around your pinky in your left hand to give them a little bit of tension, and then insert your index finger and thumb down through the 2 strands to open them up into a diamond shape. Position your DPN so that they're kind of facing towards your hand. It makes it easier to wrap the yarn around each needle as you go. Again, you're trying to keep that space between the 2 knitting needles as you go. It's going to be a little tricky, but it is worth practicing and getting that right. So there we go. I'm holding them as much as I'd like to hold them apart. The first step, so you've got your slip knot on the back needle. You're going to take the empty needle and create the first stitch on that one. So the empty needle will come over the index finger strand, pick it up, and loop it over. Then you're going to rotate your needles so that this needle picks up the thumb strand. So you're going over it, looping under, and making that yarn strand go between the 2 knitting needles. Do it again. So now this needle is going to pick up the finger strand by going up and over it, looping under to grab it so that the yarn is in the center again. And once again, it helps you use your finger to hold these stitches where they are so they don't slip off. You're going to bring the needles back towards you, over the thumb strand, under to grab it, and then pull that back down towards the center between the 2 needles. Next, you're going to create one more on that front stitch, the front needle. You're going to keep going, making sure that while you're working and adding stitches, you're alternating. And once you have as many as you need, and remember to count all the stitches you have on your needles, you want to make sure to go back and check to make sure you have the same number on both knitting needles. That's going to be important later when you work your first row. Okay, so now let's go back and count. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on this one, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on that one. And that's about as many as I'd like to use just to show you how this works. The next step, you're going to let go of the strands. Make sure that this stays where it is because it's not locked down. You're going to try and lock that down here in this next step. So grab your second strand, and you can see that this is just looped over. Nothing's really holding it down. I like to just twist these once so that they're kind of locked in and secured. All right, so you turn your work in order to knit the first row around. So we've cast on, I'm going to turn it so that the yarn tail, or the working yarn, is on the top needle, and I'm ready to work my first row. And I'll show you how to do that here in a second. So we have cast on our stitches for Judy's, and we're going to show you how to knit the first row because it can be a little tricky. I've got 3 DPNs here. I'll be using 2 of them. So I'll knit halfway across the row and then leave that DPN where it is, pick up the next one and knit the rest of the row. So that way we're dividing our stitches onto 4 needles eventually and working with the 5th needle. This is a good crash course on how to knit with DPNs as well. So with our yarn in the back and our stitches ready to go, we will insert that knitting needle, the DPN, through that stitch from the front to the back, just like regular knitting. And again, this is going to be very tight. So it's going to be a little fiddly the first row. So in, knit, and then pull it through and slip it off. And try and make sure you're not putting that stitch back on the knitting needles on accident. So again, you're coming through that stitch, the front leg, knitwise, knit it, pull it through. And again. And the reason you could just knit on 2 needles, but introducing another needle in this row to make a triangle shape makes it much easier to knit. Gives you more room. The next stitch, so you've got that knitting needle you were just working with, you're going to introduce another one and continue to knit the cast on row from that first knitting needle onto the new needle. So again, we're going to work that stitch, and again, it's getting super tight. And this is why it's important to keep your knitting needles as far apart as possible while you're casting on. It just gives you a little bit more breathing room. And as always, take your time. Don't rush on this step. If you do wind up dropping a stitch, just start over. It's much easier than trying to pick it up or fix it. Okay, so we've worked across that first knitting needle. We now have 2 DPNs where there were 1. And now, so you can see it's a little bit looser, you've got a little bit more room. We're going to turn, working around in the circle to work on that second needle that we cast onto. So I like to keep those DPNs tucked backwards. They're always tucked underneath each other, kind of in a circle. So we're going to take the next DPN and knit into the first stitch on that needle. This is already feeling much easier and looser because I've already got a few stitches knit. And on the second needle, I want to note that these stitches are twisted. So you're going to want to knit, instead of through the front loop, if you want a totally seamless join, knit through the back loop on that second needle. So again, you're coming in through the back, but you're still knitting. So you're coming upwards, knit, pull it through. And again, so you're coming through the back loop, upwards, and pull it through. One more, and then I'm going to introduce the other knitting needle. So we've got 4 on that one. Grab the other empty one, and this is where it gets a little crazy. So we're going to 1, 2, 3, and we've worked all of the stitches on all of the needles. And now we have 4. So I'm going to lay these out so that you can see what's going on here. You now have 2 rows of stitches joined in the center. You're working around and around and around in a circle. It'll be much easier and clearer the next round. So when you pick it up, you'll work this next knitting needle here. Around and around and around. So you can see that starting to form. Here's the center of that cast on, and here are all your live stitches. And that is how to work Judy's Magic Cast On. You're all set to knit all the toe-up socks and other projects you can dream of. If you found this tutorial helpful, be sure to click the thumbs up and leave a comment down below. Subscribe to knitting.com if you'd like to stay in the loop and check out our other social media channels. Until the next time, happy knitting.